Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
I used to tell myself that the ache in my chest wasn't about them. It was about timing, distance, work schedules, adult life just getting in the way like it always does. That's what people say, right? That it's normal to drift a little, that everyone's busy, that you shouldn't take it personally. But when it's your parents, the people who literally created you, wiped your nose, paid your dentist bills, and said, "We'll always be proud of you no matter what," when it's them, it hits different. Especially when they say they can't make it to the biggest night of your life. And especially when that same night, they're at your sister's picnic eating goddamn hot dogs in lawn chairs like it's Memorial Day. The morning started fine. I woke up before my alarm, which never happens, and I took it as a good sign. I made coffee the strong way, the way I like it, none of that watered-down crap my mom always made that tasted like disappointment. I looked out my kitchen window while the machine hissed, and I thought, this is it, Riley. Tonight, people are gonna see you. It wasn't just a launch party. It was my launch party. 2 years of busting my ass writing a book no one asked for, organizing a charity event for kids who didn't have the kind of family I had or didn't have, depending on how you look at it, and pulling sponsors together with nothing but a LinkedIn premium account and a borrowed dress. 2 damn years. And my parents? They texted me the night before and said they couldn't make it. Just like that. No reason. No, sorry, we're out of town, or dad has a doctor's appointment, or mom's got a migraine. Just a casual little message that said, "We'll be there in spirit, honey." So proud of you. Spirit. What the hell does that even mean? It sounds like something you say at a funeral, not your daughter's event. Not your daughter, who you always said was so responsible and so independent. And maybe that's the thing, right? Maybe I got so good at pretending I didn't need them, they started believing it. I didn't respond right away. I didn't trust myself, not to text back something I'd regret. Instead, I swallowed it like I always did. I spent the morning pacing around my apartment rehearsing my speech, the one I'd rewritten at least 20 times to sound just vulnerable enough, but still polished. You know, professional. Inspiring. The kind of speech that says, I have my life together, without screaming, I need validation. I kept practicing the part about how stories change lives, how when kids hear that they matter, they grow into people who believe it. I believed that. Or I wanted to. God, I really wanted to. By 5 o'clock, I was at the venue, this beautiful old library-turned-event space with stained glass windows and creaky wood floors that made you feel like you were stepping into someone else's memory. Volunteers were lighting candles and setting out the signed books on tables covered in deep navy linens. Everything looked perfect. It even smelled perfect, like old pages and citrus. I felt ready. Nervous, but ready. A few early guests wandered in, and someone handed me a glass of white wine I didn't really want but held anyway. I was standing near the back, pretending to check the run of show on my clipboard when my phone buzzed. A notification from Facebook. Tara was live. My stomach turned. I opened the app without thinking, and there they were. My mom and dad, sitting on folding chairs in Tara's backyard, surrounded by pastel balloons and paper plates. My mom was laughing at something my dad said, tossing back her head in that way she used to do when I was little and funny and enough. My dad was holding a can of root beer and talking to someone off camera. Tara panned the phone around to show a table covered in cupcakes and sandwiches and tiny mason jars filled with pink lemonade. I couldn't hear what she was saying because of the music, some upbeat acoustic garbage, but I saw the caption at the bottom. Sunday Funday Picnic with the Fam. It was 5:23. My speech was at 6. The library was exactly 10 minutes from Tara's house. I knew because I timed it when I mailed out the invites. I wanted them to come early and not feel rushed. I wanted them to have no excuses. But they weren't here. They were there. And that was when it hit me, not just the hurt, but the finality of it. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't about timing. It wasn't about busyness. It was a choice. They chose her. Again. Just like they always had. When she got pregnant at 19 and they threw her a damn shower with matching decorations. When she dropped out of nursing school and they told her, "You've got a beautiful soul. Honey, college isn't everything." When she dated that loser with the DUI and they said, "He just needs guidance." But me? God forbid I forget to call on Mother's Day. God forbid I ask them to read something I wrote. Someone tapped my shoulder then. It was Kara, the event coordinator, whispering that they were ready for me. I smiled without showing my teeth and handed her my glass. My palms were damp. My throat felt tight. But my back? My back was straight. I walked toward the front of the room, past rows of people clapping politely, people who thought they were here for a celebration. They didn't know what was about to happen. I took the mic. And I didn't give the speech I wrote. The lights weren't blinding, not like I'd imagined they would be, but there was something about standing on that stage that made my skin buzz and my heart slam against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I could see the faces in the crowd, some familiar, others polite strangers clapping out of obligation, but I didn't look for anyone in particular because I already knew who wasn't there. That empty spot in the front row, the one we reserved just in case, stared back at me harder than any camera lens ever could. I'd held the printed speech in my hands, trembling just a little, the words typed cleanly in 12-point font, the same version I'd emailed to the MC that morning, the one I had practiced aloud in front of my bedroom mirror until I was hoarse. It was good. Safe. Heartfelt in the way Hallmark cards are heartfelt, neat, tidy, a little sparkly, and not at all dangerous. But as I stepped to the microphone and the soft murmur in the room faded into a hush, something inside me shifted, and I knew, without any planning or permission from the careful part of my brain, that I wasn't going to read a single word from that paper. I folded it once, then again, and slipped it into my pocket like it was just a napkin I didn't need anymore. I took a slow breath, smiled, because that's what people expect when you're standing on a stage in heels and makeup, and I began with a line I hadn't rehearsed once. You know, I always thought it would feel different, being seen. A few people nodded, those polite empathy nods people do when they're not entirely sure where something's going but want to seem supportive. I went on before anyone could fill the silence. Not just standing in front of a crowd, not just being clapped for. I mean actually being seen for who you are. The messy parts. The weird kid you were. The quiet girl in the corner who didn't need much, didn't ask for much, didn't make a scene. The one who handled her own bruises and didn't complain too loud when things felt unfair. The one who said, "It's okay, I understand," way more times than she ever should have. My throat tightened, but I didn't let it take me down. I had too much to say and not enough oxygen to say it with tears clogging my voice. I spent nearly 10,000 hours, maybe it was like 2,000? Hell, math was never my strong suit. Anyway, I spent years building this night. I wrote a book I didn't think anyone would care about. I fought to make this charity more than a hashtag, and I did it without a big name, without a manager, without a safety net. And I did it thinking maybe, just maybe, if I worked hard enough, it would mean something. A soft laugh from the crowd after the math comment helped ease the tension. I let it hang for a second before I continued, my voice steady and strangely calm. But tonight, when I saw my parents sitting at a picnic just 10 minutes away, laughing like it was Sunday brunch, like I hadn't been asking them to show up for me my entire life, I realized something. I realized this night isn't for them. I paused. You could hear a pin drop. Or a judgmental blink. This night is for the forgotten ones. A beat. And then a hush that felt like electricity. This is for every daughter who played second fiddle to a prettier, louder, needier sister. For every son who watched his parents bend over backward for someone else while he sat quiet with straight A's and empty praise. This is for the ones who didn't get the photo albums or the surprise visits or the warm hugs on cold days. For the ones who had to pretend not to care because caring hurt too damn much. Someone in the back wiped their eyes. I heard it. A little sniffle. That was all I needed to keep going. You can spend your whole life trying to earn love that was never withheld because of you, but because of them. Because they didn't know how to hold more than one person in their arms at a time. Because they saw your strength and confused it for distance. Because you were easy to forget. A small burst of applause rose and quickly faded again. I looked into the lens of the nearest camera, locked eyes with it, and smiled a different kind of smile this time. One that wasn't polite or practiced. One that belonged only to me. So if you're watching this, and you feel like the background character in your own family, I want you to hear me loud and clear. You're not invisible. And you're not alone. Another pause. And then I closed with the line that had been burning in the back of my throat since I opened my mouth. This is for the forgotten ones. This time, the applause didn't fade. It rolled like a wave, loud, sudden, almost shocked. Some people stood. A few didn't clap at all. I watched their faces carefully. The polite ones, the unsure ones, the people wondering if they were the parents I'd just called out. They didn't know whether to cheer or walk out. I stepped down from the stage before the MC could rush back up. I didn't wait for validation. I didn't need it. Backstage, I reached for my phone like it might burn me. And it did. 12 texts. All from home group, the family thread we only used for birthdays and vague holiday plans. The first one was from my dad. We didn't deserve that, Riley. Not in public. Then my mom, why would you humiliate us like that? And Tara, oh sweet Tara, ever the golden one, ever the mediator, ever the diplomatic queen of guilt. Why would you do that to Mom? I didn't respond. I read the messages over and over, but I didn't respond. Not yet. Because maybe, for once in my life, it was my turn to let them sit in silence. By the time I got home, the adrenaline had worn off, and I was left with that strange hollow feeling that sometimes creeps in after the best moments of your life, like joy had been vacuumed out and replaced with a weird cocktail of guilt and clarity. The living room was still exactly as I'd left it, pillows fluffed, coffee mug half-finished on the table, a cardigan hanging off the back of the couch like it had slumped in exhaustion too. I kicked off my shoes, peeled out of the blazer I wore on stage, and sat down cross-legged on the floor like I used to when I was a kid watching Saturday morning cartoons. Only now the screen was filled with blinking notifications and unread messages instead of colorful mascots hawking cereal. There were 17 text messages and 3 voicemails waiting for me before I'd even opened my inbox. One from my boss, which I ignored, 2 from friends just saying damn with various amounts of exclamation points, and the rest? All family. I didn't play the first voicemail right away. I stared at the timestamp like it might change if I waited long enough. Finally, I tapped play and let my dad's voice fill the quiet room. His tone was familiar, too familiar, level, rehearsed, like he was trying out for a role in a local theater production of Disappointed Father. I could practically see him pacing the back porch, phone to his ear, other hand on his hip the way he always did when he was processing something important. Riley, he said, and even that single word came out with the weight of a sigh. I don't know what that was tonight, but you really blindsided us. We don't appreciate being made out to be villains in front of your friends, your donors, and God knows who else. That wasn't fair to your mother. She was really hurt by what you said. I paused the message there, let the silence fill the room again. I'd heard that phrase before. That wasn't fair to your mother. It was a classic, right up there with why can't you just let things go and you're always so sensitive about the past. I played the rest of it anyway. He wrapped it up with something about how we've always done our best, and you've got to understand things from our perspective too, but there was no apology, not even a whisper of maybe we could have handled things differently. It was like watching a magician pull excuses out of a hat instead of rabbits. Then came Tara's message. It was just a picnic, Riley. Chill. You didn't have to go nuclear. I could see her face as I read it, perfectly composed, slightly annoyed, like she was inconvenienced by my pain more than anything else. And the worst part? I don't think she meant it to be cruel. I think she genuinely believed I'd overreacted, that I'd made a mountain out of a very familiar molehill we all just learned to walk around. But not everyone thought so. The DMs started coming in about an hour after the event, when someone from the crowd posted a short clip from my speech to their story with the caption, "She said what needed to be said." From there, the wave built fast. Some were sweet, little messages from strangers who said they cried during the speech. Others were more cautious, asking if I was okay, asking if I regretted it, asking if I'd made it all up for attention. But then came the one that stopped me cold. It was a simple message from a woman named Claudia who looked to be in her 60s, profile picture of her and a cat on a porch swing. She wrote, "My daughter said the same thing to me before she cut me off. I didn't listen. Thank you for this." That was it. One sentence. No emoji, no qualifiers, no need to explain. And it landed harder than any accusation or compliment I'd read all night. Because here was someone admitting what my parents never could, that sometimes we get so used to a child being self-sufficient, we forget they're still human. Still hungry for warmth. Still watching every decision we make and every time we don't show up. I stared at the message for a long time, thumb hovering over the screen like it might burn me, until I finally hit like just to let her know I'd seen it. I didn't have words for her yet, but I had acknowledgement, and that felt like a start. After sitting in the dark for a while, letting the low hum of the refrigerator fill the silence, I opened the clip of my speech someone had tagged me in. The quality wasn't great, it was wobbly, and the audio peaked when the applause hit, but it captured the moment. The line, the raw silence right before I said it. "This is for the forgotten ones." I watched myself say it on the screen. Calm. Controlled. But I remembered how hard my hands were shaking behind the podium. I remembered the weight of every word because I meant them. And as I watched the comments start rolling in some kind, some confused, a few downright nasty, I felt something shift. This wasn't just a moment. This was something people needed. Not just me, not just Claudia, but thousands of people who sat in the second row their whole lives, smiling politely while someone else got the front seat and all the attention. I copied the video, uploaded it to my own profile, captioned it simply, "If you know, you know." And then I hit post. I didn't think it would get bigger than a few hundred shares and some thoughtful comments from strangers whose names I'd never heard before, but by the next afternoon the clip had already crossed 20,000 views and was still gaining traction by the minute. My phone buzzed constantly. Text messages, call requests, notifications from platforms I hadn't logged into in months, and even a voicemail from a woman claiming to be a producer for a morning talk show I'd grown up watching with my mother on school days when I'd pretend to be sick just for the chance to lie next to her on the couch. Suddenly, I was no longer Riley Carter, the middle child in her own life, the girl who faded into the wallpaper of her family's narrative. I was Riley Carter, the woman who said what we were all thinking, according to one Twitter account with over 200,000 followers. Hashtags started popping up, first small and local, hashtag the forgotten ones and hashtag not invisible anymore, but within a day, I saw posts from women in their 50s, college kids, even a couple of therapists and writers citing my quote in articles about emotional neglect and childhood favoritism. Somewhere between reading a DM from a woman who said she finally found the courage to tell her parents how they made her feel and opening an email from a journalist requesting an interview, it hit me that this wasn't about my family anymore. Not just. It was about something bigger than them and certainly bigger than me. It was about how many people had spent their lives waiting on the edge of love that never fully arrived, cheering from the sidelines of someone else's spotlight, being told they were strong when what they really needed was softness. Of course, the other side showed up too. People who thought I was petty, attention-seeking, cruel. That I humiliated my family for clout. A few Bible verses sprinkled in there, the usual moral superiority from strangers with usernames like Grace First Mama and Faithwalker62, all telling me to forgive and let go and go back to the fold. But the thing is, I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way they assumed. I was exhausted. And there's something about exhaustion that sharpens the truth like a blade. It was 2 days after the speech when Tara finally called. Not a text, not a voice memo, not a sarcastic emoji, an actual phone call. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Mostly because I was curious to see how long she could go before making it about Mom. I didn't even get a full hello out before she launched into it. "You know Mom hasn't stopped crying," she said, her voice sharp but fraying around the edges, like she'd been rehearsing this, but couldn't quite keep the performance steady. There was a pause long enough for me to wonder if she was actually waiting for an answer or just letting it hang for dramatic effect. "She thinks you hate her now," Tara added. "She can't eat, she barely sleeps, she's been watching your video over and over." I exhaled, long and slow, not because I was tired of hearing it, but because it was exactly what I expected. Mom couldn't attend the event, but she had time to watch the clip on loop. That about summed it up. "I don't hate her," I said, and I meant it. I really did. I just finally stopped pretending she loved me the same. That line did something. I heard it land in Tara's silence like a stone dropped in still water. She didn't argue. Didn't launch into a list of reasons why I was wrong or misunderstood or too sensitive. She just paused. And for once, I didn't fill the silence for her. She never responded. She just hung up after a long stretch of quiet, and that was the last time I heard her voice, at least for a while. A few days later, I got invited to appear on a podcast I'd listened to maybe a dozen times over the years, an offbeat show hosted by two siblings who read old journals, letters, and personal essays, then discussed the stories behind them with humor and a surprising amount of heart. I said yes before I could talk myself out of it, then spent a full night digging through the storage boxes in my closet for the old floral-covered notebooks I used to scribble in during middle school and early high school, back when I believed writing things down made them real. On the podcast, I read an entry from when I was 13 years old, written in glitter pen, talking about how Mom took Tara shopping for a new dress while I stayed home and cleaned the bathroom. Even though I'd gotten straight A's that semester and Tara had literally flunked gym. I read it with laughter in my voice, making fun of my dramatic language, my bad spelling, the way I capitalized never in 3 different spots like I was making a legal declaration. But underneath the laughter, you could hear it, truth like a heartbeat. The podcast hosts didn't make it heavy, but they didn't dismiss it either. They let it breathe. And that, in its own way, was a kind of revenge I never expected to enjoy. Honest. Quiet. Public. I didn't drag anyone's name through the mud. I just let my younger self speak. That night, back home again, I listened to the full episode twice, and then opened my phone to check messages, expecting the usual mix of love and backlash. But there was only one voicemail this time. From my mother. Her voice was shaky, softer than I'd heard in years. There was no anger in it, no guilt-tripped tone, no edge of righteous indignation. Just tired words spoken slowly, like they hurt coming out. "You don't know everything, Riley," she said, and my stomach tightened. "You never knew the whole story." She didn't say what the story was. She didn't clarify or explain or apologize. Just that one unsettling, half-formed confession that clung to the inside of my chest like a fog I couldn't shake. And that's the problem with silence, isn't it? Eventually, it starts to sound like secrets. Driving back to the house felt like inching through someone else's dream, slow, sticky with memory, and full of those uncomfortable moments when your brain keeps trying to protect you by flooding the present with pieces of the past, whether you want them or not. The trees lining the road had barely changed, maybe a little taller, maybe a little thinner near the base where the town had started digging up roots to make way for new sidewalks. I passed the grocery store where Mom used to buy discount cookies on Thursdays and the gas station where Dad once yelled at me for letting the tank hit empty again. Everything looked the same, but smaller, like someone had taken the life-sized set of my childhood and shrunk it down to diorama scale without telling me. I hadn't been home in over 4 years. Not for holidays, not for birthdays, not even when Aunt Sheila died and Tara sent me a guilt-soaked message about how it's what she would have wanted. The only thing that would have made me show up before now was maybe the end of the world, and even then I would have considered my options. But today, I needed something even if I couldn't name it. Closure, maybe. Proof. Or maybe just confirmation that I had, in fact, left something behind worth mourning. The house itself was frozen in time, a split-level monument to beige walls and decorative hand towels no one was allowed to use. I still had a key. Dad had insisted I keep one even after things got tense, so I let myself in without knocking. The quiet hit me like a slap, not hostile, but still loud in its own way, like the walls were holding their breath to see what version of me had come walking through the door. No one was home. At least not physically. The living room looked untouched, couch pillows arranged in that perfect stiff way Mom always insisted on, and a thin layer of dust on the TV cabinet like no one had really been here, not with their full presence, in a while. I walked slowly, letting the floorboards creak beneath me, not out of caution, but because I wanted to hear the place talk back. I wanted to feel something shift, some whisper of who I'd been when this house still meant comfort instead of obligation. My old room was the same. Same lilac walls, same dent in the desk where I'd dropped a metal lamp during a tantrum at 15, same crooked picture of a lighthouse I bought for $3 at a flea market because I once thought lighthouses were romantic. I stood in the doorway for a long time before I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of old carpet and lemon cleaner, and for a second, I imagined myself crawling back into the twin bed like none of this had ever happened, like I could rewind all the way back to before the resentment set in. But I didn't sit. I walked straight to the closet and opened the sliding doors, knowing exactly what I was looking for even though I hadn't seen it in years. A large white shoebox with the word miscellaneous written in Dad's handwriting across the top. It had always been his catch-all box, the place he stuffed receipts, stamps, instructions for electronics he never used, and birthday cards we made as kids with smeared crayon rainbows and too many exclamation marks. The box was heavier than I expected. I sat on the floor with it and lifted the lid slowly, expecting clutter, but what I found made my hands go cold. Letters. Stacks of them. Unsent, unopened, unstamped. All addressed to me. Some were typed, others scribbled in Dad's sharp, slanted handwriting. The first one I pulled out was dated from 6 years ago, right after I'd moved out of state for work and we'd stopped talking as often. It was an apology, kind of. More like an explanation. He wrote about feeling like I never needed him, about not knowing how to support a daughter who didn't ask for help but clearly still wanted it. He said he didn't know how to bridge the gap between us without feeling like he was being judged for trying too late. There were drafts of birthday notes, half-finished thinking of you messages, and one from the week before the gala, printed out from what looked like a Word doc and folded carefully. I was planning to come, it began. I had it on the calendar. I even ironed a shirt. But then your mom got upset, and Tara said you might use the speech to embarrass us, and I didn't want to make things worse. I thought maybe if we just stayed away, it would be easier. That line hit me harder than any voicemail ever could. Not because it was cruel, but because it was so familiar, the same quiet logic that ran through our family like bad plumbing, the same way they always chose ease over effort, peace over presence, comfort over confrontation. He had intended to come. He just didn't. I put the letters back carefully, not because I wanted to preserve them, but because I didn't want to feel responsible for destroying something so stupidly fragile. Then I left the house without taking anything else. Tara texted later that day. Just an address and a time. A diner halfway between our places, the one with the orange booths and sticky menus we used to go to after softball games. She was already there when I walked in, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, tapping her spoon against a water glass like she had something important to say but didn't know where to start. I slid into the booth across from her, and we just stared at each other for a minute. No smile. No hello. Then she said it. They didn't pick me over you. They just didn't know how to love more than one person at a time. I looked down at the table, at the napkin folded neatly in half like someone had planned to clean up a mess before it even happened. I didn't speak. I didn't need to, because that was it. The truth. Not fair, not right, but true in that awful way family truths tend to be: messy, ugly, and too late to fix properly. Later that night, back in my apartment, I opened my laptop and wrote out the closing lines for the follow-up interview someone had requested. A final thought. A wrap-up. A thing to say when the music swells and the credits roll. Not everyone gets a family who sees them. But some of us get a voice. And this? This was for the forgotten ones.